welcome to another episode of Waves of Wisdom. And I am your host, Iyaz Wahid. Today with me is a friend of mine all the way from UK, and we have met number of occasions in Maldives, in India, and different places. He has been working on developing teams and bringing together business networking and human connection for last 20 years. Even the BBC once described him as the best speech ever, uh, kind of tagline. He's also the co-author of Financial Times Guide to Mentoring, which is a book I read and really opened up my eyes as a mentor, though I have been practicing mentoring for last decade or so. So let's welcome Andy to the show. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Iyaz. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's good to see you again.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to meet you and have a conversation, especially in the field of human connection, building business networking, and also especially about mentoring. The first time I saw you speaking was, I think, in the Maldives Learning and Development Conference. You spoke as a keynote speaker about the importance of mentoring and why mentoring is important for the organizations and people to develop. And it really opened up my eyes. And I grabbed your book, the book around when went around with me in Southeast Asia while I was reading it and when I was traveling. That kept me company. And I really wanted to talk to you on this subject and whatever others you are doing at the moment. So, Andy, let's start with how everything started, like how your career started and what made you to concentrate and interest in this particular field and especially to write the book about mentoring.
Well, actually, I've got to go back longer than you think,
Mm-hmm.
because I've actually been in this space for 26 years now. And it all started because I quit my job. I was working for an American corporate running car parks in the UK. And I quit my job and I decided I was going to be a freelance writer. And my father, 6 months before, had um, uh, started a company with a colleague. It was a business networking groups. If anyone's come across BNI,
Mm-hmm.
which well-known referral focused organization, we were the British version of BNI, the British competition to BNI. And so he'd founded that, and 6 months later, I quit my job to become a writer, and he invited me to come in temporarily to support them and earn a little bit of money before I got writing commissions, and that was it. That was the start of the journey. The irony is, I never became a freelance writer, but I've written I've written 6 books. I've written for Harvard Business Review and Fast Company, and all of these. I think my writing has reached more of a global audience than I ever imagined when I was going to make that my profession. So I joined my father. I worked with him in that business. We worked together for 8 years. We sold our stakes to our business partner in 2007. And then we briefly opened our own very early version of a social network. That didn't take off for various reasons. We were perhaps a little bit ahead of the curve there. But I also started working with corporates, training them on networking strategy. And then that was 2007. In 2019, I reframed what I did away from networking strategy, because when people hear the word networking, they get certain ideas in their head, and that wasn't really reflective of what I was teaching. And I reframed it to professional relationship strategy. Now, if you look at professional relationships as a whole, and you look at what I deliver, it all comes under that umbrella. So
Yeah.
I was, to go to the point on mentoring, my fifth book was about vulnerability and asking for help, the importance of asking for help and getting help. So there was a chapter on mentoring and masterminding within that. I'd always spoken about mentoring for many years, and I had mentored, and I had delivered training courses for a core in Southeast Asia, for example, on mentoring. But when I wrote Just Ask, I felt that that was the next book that I needed to write. And I wanted to go deeper into mentoring than I had before. And one thing that I've learned over the years, you write a book for a number of different reasons, but one of the reasons that's perhaps less talked about, but really important, is writing a book is one of the best ways to master a topic.
Yes.
Because you force yourself to dive more deeply into the topic than the knowledge you already have. And as I say, I was already speaking on network, on mentoring and running mentoring training courses, but by both having to write the book and do that deep dive and collaborating with someone else, Dr. Ruth Goethe in New York, who was also a very experienced mentor, former assistant dean of mentoring at Weill Cornell Medical School. That pushed me even more, because what Ruth would do would be push my assumptions, challenge my assumptions, and vice versa. And I think those discussions are an important part of it as well. And then there's all the people we interview. So I was starting to consider mentoring from a broader perspective than I had before. So when Ruth and I got together to write the Financial Times Guide to Mentoring, we wanted to write the book that wasn't there yet, that was more comprehensive than anything that was out there. So we started to look at topics like the impact of imposter syndrome on mentoring, the importance of understanding neurodivergence when you're mentoring people, things like that that are probably not in the basics of mentoring. So again, I'm going more deeply into the topic. So mentoring isn't my core topic. It is one of the things I talk about, but the presentation that you heard in the Maldives, one of the things that I did, I wrote a new presentation for that audience, because as a learning and development conference, I didn't want to turn up and just talk about the basics of mentoring. So I have a talk that introduces mentoring to an audience that hasn't really embraced it yet. But I developed a second talk, the mentoring in the modern world, where we talked about neurodivergence, where we talked about AI, another topic that we looked at for the book, and the impact of AI on mentoring. And so that's been a great journey for me, because you can't call yourself an expert if you believe you know everything about a topic, if that makes sense. Because I think if you think you know everything about a topic, you're not leaving yourself space to explore further. And by writing the book, by developing a talk for an audience that I felt my standard talk would be too basic for, and I've subsequently written another talk on mentoring to build on that, it's constantly pushing me to understand that stream of my topic in more depth. I've probably answered about 6 questions and gone way away from your original one, but hopefully that gives food for thought.
No, it's really made me to think as well, because I think one thing which stayed with me from a recent podcast I listened to, Simon Sinek was saying that he became actually exactly the same thing you are saying. He said he became a better person not because he published a book. He became a better person because he wrote the book himself. So the grinding you go through, the interviews you do, it 100% resonates with me as well, because I'm in this process at the moment. I'm in the process of writing my first book. So I think I'm lucky to have you on this show, and because you are an expert in mentoring. And before I ask I really want some ideas about, as a mentor, what you would tell me about writing the book. But before that, actually, when I was reading your book, because I'm also ICF certified coach, but I have been doing mentoring, for example, for entrepreneurs, for accountants, because by profession I'm a chartered management accountant, CIMA UK. But I have been mentoring some students, SEMA students. I have been also engaged with the Founders Institute USA to mentor entrepreneurs and startup entrepreneurs from the South Asia region. Uh, but until I read your book, I didn't really understand the difference between actual mentoring and coaching. Because can you explain a little bit for our audience the many people use I hear people use this word in very interchangeably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and the interesting thing, I'll give you my book definition in a second,
Okay.
but before I do, just to position it, this is one of the most fascinating discussion points. We recorded a couple of series of videos. One of them was with Thinkers 50 leaders, predominantly, and business leaders. And we asked them a series of questions revolving around mentoring, one of which was, what's the difference between mentoring and coaching? We recorded a similar series of videos with Olympians and Paralympians to coincide with the Olympic Games last year. And we asked them the same question. And everyone has a different answer. And no one's necessarily wrong. It's opinions, it's perspectives, but there are so many different points that go into this. So this is my definition. And that is that a mentor is someone who has expertise and experience in the topic or the journey that you are challenged with and you're undertaking, and they are there to support you with the benefit of their experience and expertise. Now, just to reinforce, you start to go into reverse mentoring and peer mentoring. So
Mhm.
experience doesn't necessarily mean they're older than you and they're more senior than you. That's what we call traditional hierarchical mentoring in the book. And it's the image most people have. But a senior leader might be mentored by a junior person in their organization so they can understand better the digital world, the AI world. They might want to understand better gender politics. They might want to understand better um, environmental and sustainability issues, and that's led by younger generations. All of those things. A more junior person will have a better idea of what's being said on the ground or what the conversations with customers and clients are. So reverse mentoring fits that definition as well, and I just wanted to stress that. A coach doesn't necessarily have that experience. They don't necessarily have that expertise. They may know nothing about the journey you're going on at all, but they are trained, as you will be as an ICF certified coach, to ask questions, to lead you on a journey of exploration, to help you find the answers. Now, where it starts to get grey and fuzzy, and it just starts to get grey and fuzzy, is that a great mentor coaches. So if I was to mentor you on writing your book, for example, I've written 6 books. I've been published by mainstream publishers like Pearson, who publish Financial Times books. I've also been published by more boutique publishers. So I have some insights into the options. So if you were to say to me, what's the best route for publishing for me, which many people do. I had this conversation this week, and I will regularly. I can sit there, and sometimes I will say, well, look, here's the pros of traditional publishing, here's the cons, and here's the reverse for self-publishing and boutique publishing. But actually, I would be a better mentor if I say, well, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve from the book? What does success look like? How quickly do you want to publish it? What's your financial state? So let's start exploring that first and have those discussions and challenge you on some of your answers, and then bring it together and say, okay, well, and this is the difference between a mentor and a coach. A coach will lead you to work out what you feel is the right answer. A mentor will do that to a large degree, but also bring in their experience. Say, look, in my experience, I think this might be better for you. What both should do is leave their mentee stroke coachee to come up with the answer for themselves. There are other nuances there, and there's some really interesting ones. So in my pure form, we run into a challenge because a coach is someone who questions but doesn't necessarily have the experience or the expertise. A mentor is someone who has that experience or expertise. But if you look at the US particularly, but even in the UK to a degree, it's quite a large degree, we have a culture where coaches are paid and mentors are not. And that's because many companies will ask senior leaders to mentor, and that's done as a voluntary thing. But actually, you talk about coaching and mentoring entrepreneurs. If you have the experience and expertise and you're not in that person's company, why shouldn't they pay you and value that expertise? And I had lunch yesterday with the chief executive of the Association of Business Mentors in the UK. And one of the key things she's trying to do is change that perception of mentoring so that
Mhm.
people value mentors in the way we do coaches, because there's no reason why not. In a conversation I had last year with the leaders of a 100 coaches agency, Marshall Goldsmith's 100 coaches in the US, that we went through what I do. I call myself a mentor. I am not qualified as a coach, so I purposely don't call myself a coach. But they said, but Andy, you are a coach in our terms, because they bridge and their terms. I'm not talking about 100 coaches agency. I'm talking about the US
Mhm.
market. They that grey area has really clouded over. So mentors are coaches in. So effectively in the US, simplifying. And I might get challenged on this, but I don't think I will from the conversations I've had. This is my perspective from those conversations. Mentors are called coaches if they're paid. But for me, that's not a pure definition of the difference. So I might have
Yeah,
confused you before there, but it's just such a fascinating area. And there's so many other answers in those videos as well.
exactly.
But
And one of the
yeah,
one of the learnings, one of the things I really take away from your book is to actually understanding when to mentor and when to coach is so powerful, because
yeah.
even within your team sometimes you can actually decide, okay, this is something I can coach them, or this is something I need to mentor them. That realization was quite powerful, I would say.
And you need to look at people's learning styles. Some people um, need a more directive mentoring style, and sometimes that's not by choice. So a friend and colleague of mine sent me a message, Andy, can you recommend a coach for me? He said, but I don't want someone who's going to lead me around the houses with lots of questions. I want someone who's going to give me the answers. I said, oh, you want a mentor then, do you? And he is a coach. He is a
Yeah.
coach himself as part of his business. Um, so he wants to be told the answers. You know, when I sit down with my mentor, I want to mix. And I guess I do want to find the answer for myself sometimes. And I want to be challenged in the way that a coach will
Mhm.
challenge. But my mentor is my mentor because he has the answers that I need. So there's personality style and there's context as well. Um, does someone, you don't need every single answer you're looking for to be a learning experience. Sometimes you just need the answer. Sometimes you just want the advice. You know, if I use a very typical analogy, if I'm if I stop at the side of the road on a journey and ask for directions, I don't want someone to coach me through the journey. I don't want them to say, well, what do you think would happen if you went north?
Yeah.
I want them to tell me you need
Which
to go
place you
north.
think will be there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
If you see a signpost that's pointing this way or that way, what do you think you should do?
yes,
That's not what I'm looking for. So I've never used that analogy before. I quite like that one.
yeah,
I might use that again. So again, understand when, as you say, people need coaching, people need mentoring, and respond accordingly.
yeah. So, in mentoring, what is the approach you use apart from, like, for example, uh, if I want a mentor, for example, um, say even not all organizations have mentoring programs, right? So if I think majority of the organizations doesn't, so this question goes to on behalf of the people from those organizations who don't have mentoring programs. Uh, so how they can actually find mentors, or what should they do, or how should they approach a mentor?
So I'm trying to think about the right order in which to answer this, because um, when Ruth and I wrote the book, we only had two or three areas on which we disagreed. one of which was whether mentors are paid or not. Ruth is American, and I've just explained that different mindset around mentoring. Another was whether you can ask someone to mentor you. Ruth is adamant you should never ask someone to mentor you. It's a big ask, and it's a big commitment for someone, and it's a tough ask. I understand where she's coming from, and there are other colleagues of ours like Dory Clark, very famous management writer and speaker, and professor at Duke, who also agrees with Ruth. You never ask anyone to mentor you. I have asked people to mentor me. Some have said yes, some have said no. Most important things, I've been okay with that, but those people I've known really well. I wouldn't necessarily go up to someone cold and ask them to mentor me. I've had people ask me cold. But actually, you know what? I have mentored people that have asked me cold, but they're the exceptions rather than the rule. There's something compelling about their ask. So, for example, I was approached by, at the time, a 16-year-old schoolgirl who wanted to told me her story about being the only person of color in a public school in the south of England, being bullied, and wanting to drive an anti-bullying campaign across what we call sixth form in the UK, the last 2 years of normal school, across North London. And that really appealed to me as someone who's bullied at school and who's very anti-racism. It also worked out beautifully. I didn't realize at the time she was at the same, she was in a new place where it was much better. It turned out to be the same sixth form college I'd gone to many years earlier. So I did respond to her positively straight away. But it's the exception rather than the rule. So that was one disagreement. But I have asked and I've been asked, and I don't take offense, but it does put me in an awkward position if I'm asked and I'm not comfortable. So the next part of the answer is to, and I'm going to take Ruth's route. So I'm going to say I don't quite agree with Ruth and Dory that you should never ask. Be very thoughtful about whether you're going to and how you approach it and where that person is with their relationship with you, and give them an escape. Give them the right to say no. Make sure they know that you're okay with that, and be okay with it yourself. Don't take it as a personal rejection. And let me come back to that towards the end of the answer. So if you're going to go down Ruth's and Dora's route of not asking direct, then we go into understanding that we have a distinction between formal and informal mentoring. So what I'm talking about is asking someone to be your formal mentor. Now, both Ruth and I are in agreement that you need a mentoring team. So there are a variety of different people who will mentor you. So that lunch I had with the CEO of the ABM turned into a mentoring session where I shared some ideas with her about things that she's trying to achieve in the ABM. That wasn't our objective, but there was a bit of informal mentoring going on there. And we'll probably meet on a regular basis, and she can pick my brains on that. I used to run a national business network, and I've been on a board of a professional association. So there's a lot of experience that she's welcome to tap into because we have that connection. But I'm not holding to her account. I'm not having a regular diaried meeting and saying, what are you doing with this, this, and this? I'm not a formal mentor, but I'm someone she knows she can turn to for advice. So the advice is just reach out with a question. If you identify someone you'd like to mentor you, turn them into your informal mentor first. Now, I believe, perhaps more strongly than Ruth, that for all the value that informal mentors bring, and we should have them around us, I have plenty around me, we should also focus on having a formal mentor, at least one, because that formal mentor holds you accountable. You have dates set in the diary to make sure that you are focusing on the questions you need to. The fact you have that date makes you think about the support that you need, rather than informally it will pass you by. So, but you can evolve someone from starting out as an informal mentor to becoming a formal one. And the last part of the answer, and I said I would loop back to this. So if anyone listening to this has read Robert Cialdini's Influence, the Power of Persuasion, which is like the Bible on influence, Cialdini says that if you ask for something big and they say no, they will feel they will want to give you something smaller. I think it comes under the law of reciprocity.
Yeah.
I asked someone in my network to mentor me. Now, he is a very well-known and highly successful speaker and author. His books are sold in the hundreds of thousands, probably worldwide. Very, very, very well known and exceptionally busy. And he said no, he didn't have time. Now, point number one, it wasn't negative about me. It was about him managing his time. He's become my mentor. He just wouldn't call himself that. But if I need his help and support, I pick up the phone, I ask him, and he gives me help and support. So he's not my formal mentor, where he will meet with me on a regular basis and go through an agenda and hold me accountable. But for example, with my fifth book, I was really struggling with the manuscript, and I asked for his feedback, and he gave me some of the most valuable feedback I've ever had.
Mhm.
Really brutally honest feedback. He said, "You've got a great book here, Andy, but this isn't it." And hearing that was what I needed to hear. I went away and rewrote it. And that's quite a time commitment, because he read the book enough to give me the feedback. And actually, he didn't want to give me the bad news. So it's his wife, who I know as well. She said, "No, you've got to be honest with it." But going back to Cialdini, I asked for the big thing. He said no, but I got lots of small that add up.
Mhm.
And it goes naturally. So let someone evolve. Does that help?
Yeah, I think I also read about that formal and informal mentoring, and then
Mm.
yeah, I think the way now you explain really help to actually understand what that happens. So now I also does a lot of, especially in the speaking circle, and especially upcoming speakers, they will call over for a coffee or a lunch or dinner or something like that. I think all of those uh, time we spent together have turned out to be informal mentoring sessions. Now I can
Yeah,
realize it.
yeah,
So
completely.
yeah, also, Andy, recently on your social media was filled with your team winning, and you celebrating that in the streets, and I think it was really good to see. And a lot of times, when it comes to sports mentoring or coaching, this is very interchange. Yeah, so something like football. Or soccer, what they call in US, and
Football. Let's stick with football. Let's stick
football.
with football.
Okay, that's how. Yeah, we call it football as well. So
Yeah, good.
yeah, so in football, in the team itself, there's a coach.
Yeah.
In technically, is he doing coaching or mentoring?
It's interesting, and I think we did address this in the book. We addressed it in a number of conversations, because by my definition, they're not a coach, they're a mentor,
Mhm.
because they typically have played the game. They know the game, they understand it, they are imparting the way they want you to do things. So it's not, you don't expect to have a sporting coaching session where the coach turns around to the athlete and says, "How do you think you should kick the ball?" They'll
Mhm.
say, "You're doing that wrong, we need you to do that," or "That's the wrong pass to play," or "That's the wrong shot to play," or whatever it might be. So from that sense, they are mentoring. So there's a confusion around the term there. It's another of those gray areas. And
Yeah,
so I think sports coaching and business coaching. I think there is a big difference between them in that sense.
yeah. Do you think David Beckham's coach can bend it like him?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I am a big football fan,
Yeah.
and I love all sports. So, and this would go across sports. So my club, you mentioned Charlton Athletic. When I started supporting the club in 1984, and it's the same year we appointed a new manager, and in 1986 we got promoted to the top division,
Mhm.
despite not playing out our own home ground and having really small crowds and being on the edge of bankruptcy. We nearly went bankrupt in 1984, but we got promoted to the top division. And our manager then, Lenny Lawrence, had never played football at a top level. He was a school teacher. And there are examples dotted through. Not they're fewer, they're the exception rather than the rule, but there are examples of players coaches who didn't play at a top level. Jose Mourinho, I'm not sure the level he played at, but he was an interpreter at Barcelona.
Yeah.
He was Bobby Robson's interpreter, and then he became one of the top coaches in the world. Meanwhile, if you look at the England team that won the 1966 World Cup, I don't think any of them had a successful coaching career. Bobby Moore, one of the best players in history, managed at the Southend, I think one other, but it didn't last long and failed. Bobby Charlton at Preston, but didn't last long and it failed. It's the same with the golden era of the England team, where um, there's been mixed results, but no one exceptional. So there is a difference between being able to excel as a practitioner and being able to show other people how to perform their best. And I think that does equate to business as well.
Mhm.
I, for myself, I have been successful in many ways, but not as successful in certain ways as I would have liked. And I think sometimes I am better at showing other people the route than following that route myself. I'm always very conscious of it, and I'm always trying to follow what I would suggest to other people. But that's, you know, I'm aware that there are those limitations. So
Yeah.
no, I'm trying to think. Uh, David Beckham's coach at the time was Sir Alex Ferguson. Again, he had a reasonable playing career, but not a world star.
Mhm. Yes. So you, yeah, you explained very well. I think now I'm getting it. The difference between it's a gray area, and the importance is knowing when to coach and when to mentor and interchangeably do it. I think it is where the growth of other people will happen. And you have taken this as your career or the thing that you will do for a reasonable time to come, right? So will I be right saying that this is your passion now?
Yes, I mean, as I said at the beginning, it's broader than mentoring. It's the
Yes.
professional relationships topic. This is
Yeah.
one part of it. I've been in this space for 26 years. I love it. Uh, I uh, I look forward to working most days, and I
Mhm.
have been in that job where you dread working most days. I I do not see myself doing anything else. We're developing a digital platform, a digital tool, stakeholder mapping tool that incorporates my approach. And we're just bringing that to market now in a limited sense. Should that be as successful as I hope, that may well change the model of how I work, but it won't
Mhm.
change what I do. It just means I'll focus more on the stuff that I'm really passionate about. I'll be able to give back more to charities and not for profits a little bit more. Travel a bit more with what I do, even though I do have the joy of traveling already. So it might change the structure of what I do, but not the content of what I do. This is my topic.
Mhm.
And whether I'm speaking about it, writing about it, podcasting, whatever it might be, mentoring, of course, I absolutely love it. And there's no better feeling than seeing someone make a breakthrough as a
Yeah.
result of an idea you've shared.
So it is kind of your calling, right, or your why. It has become that. When did you realize, actually, or what made you realize that okay, this is it. This is this is my purpose on this earth.
I honestly don't know if I could pinpoint a moment. There's not one moment that springs to mind. It was a journey. I think if I go back to when we were running the networking groups, I got a real joy from developing training and delivering training for the members, from uh, being innovative in terms of changing the agenda to make sure people got more value out of our meetings and out of their membership. And I'm going to give you a reverse. I'll give you the this is not my calling in this journey. I'll give you lots of this is not my calling before I joined this journey, but on this journey. So I got to a point where my role as managing director of that organization as we grew moved from working with and for the members to help them get the most out of their membership to managing franchisees. And that's not me. And that
Mhm.
was the point. It was that combined with the recognition that we probably weren't positioned to grow the way we could have done. And the nature of the franchise agreement structure and the unwieldy membership structure meant that you were turning around a tanker, and it would be really
Mhm.
hard to change it the way I wanted it to be. So the combination of that with the fact that my role had shifted away from what gave me joy was the point where I said, I need to get out of this. What I want to do is be delivering this training, delivering this change. So maybe that's the point. And it came from recognition that I wasn't loving what I was doing anymore, and I wanted to get back to what gave me that joy, rather than that moment of going, this is it, I'm in my zone.
Mhm. So, as a mentor, someone who has gone through this journey now, you know that I have been developing this concept of something called unretirable. People like you who have found that calling and then hanging on to that and developing it further and are very passionate about finding more breakthroughs in that area, like you just mentioned. So, what will be your advice to someone who is in the not sure stage or who is struggling to decide whether this is it or whether there was something else or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been in the opposite position as I hinted at. I've been in the job that made me unhappy, miserable, broke up a relationship, and unhealthy, and if you're in that position, and I've got friends in that position at the moment, and I, I guess it was easy for me at the time because I had no kids, didn't have a mortgage, I was only 25, so I had limited repercussions to just walking away. And that's what I did. And I went backpacked for 15 months. I traveled the world. And I mean, actually, if you really can't find happiness and you have the ability to do so, take the opportunity to travel every time you can, because they say it broadens the mind, it broadens the soul as well, and it may well help you find what you're looking for. But that's not available to everyone, particularly if you have other commitments. It would be very hard for me to do
Yeah,
today. So I make up for it by being invited to speaking conferences in the Maldives and India instead.
yeah.
But so that's the first thing. So I've been in that position. So I see friends who are in that position, and it's easy for me to sit here and say, just walk away, just quit. But we get too tied to the security of a job. Uh, Everyone listening to this needs to make their own decision about whether they can do that. I can't turn around to you and say, walk away. I don't know your circumstances. And ultimately, in any mentoring, you wouldn't mentor someone even if you knew their circumstances and tell them to do something, because you're not the one who has to live with the consequences. So everyone has to make their own choice. But what I would say is challenge yourself and be brave.
Mhm.
And the longer you stay stuck in something that's not right for you, the longer it's going to be until you find that freedom.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think you have to be very, very lucky to have the moment turn up when everything aligns and makes it work for you to find that and maintain financial freedom. Probably the only obvious example I can think of where that happens is redundancy, where you get a good payout. And you know what you want to do, and you can invest or you can play with ideas for a while. So there is some bravery, some courage required to do that. If you're in that position where you're struggling to find out what it is, talk to people, use your network, get
Mhm.
ideas. So this combines a couple of my key topic areas. One is vulnerability, because we don't open up and say, I don't know what I want to do, I'm struggling, I'm not motivated, because we think it makes us look weak.
Mhm.
And we need to get beyond that and understand we're human, and people understand human, and find people we can trust to confide in and seek support from, and go to them without a fixed perspective of what we're looking for. And this brings in the other concept is the power of our networks to support us and drive us forward. So many years ago, I worked with the BBC when they were making a lot of people redundant, and they had an outplacement program to support them. And my session was how to use your network to get a job. And I created an exercise because the BBC were moving from London to near Manchester, Salford. Plus, they were cutting down on numbers. So you had people being made redundant because they didn't want to move up north, and you had people getting redundancy anyway. So they were losing a lot of people. Now, if you think of a technical profession like television, where you had a lot of engineers and producers and cameramen and technicians coming through who knew TV, that's what they knew. That was their 30 years in TV career. And the biggest employer in the country is cutting down numbers substantially. Nowhere to go in the industry.
Mhm.
So the exercise I came up with them was this, and I still share it with friends of mine who are sort of stuck where to go next. And that is to sit down and think about three questions. Number one is, what are you good at? What
Mhm.
are you good at doing? Number two is, what do you enjoy doing? And number three is, what environment do you most want to work in? So I might say, for example, I'm good at presenting and writing. I'm good at problem solving.
Mhm.
I might then turn around and say, I love working with individuals and helping them to make breakthroughs. And I might say the environment, I don't want to be at a desk every day, 9 to 5. I want to be out meeting people and engaging with people. So with those answers, you would then go to your network, irrespective of where they work and what industry they're in. Because when we're looking for a new job, we tend to talk to people who we think work in an industry we want to work in, but we have very limited knowledge of what opportunities are out there because
Mhm.
we're limited to our own experience, and those are the experience of those closest to us. But talk to everyone you know, even if you've never considered working in that sector, and say, this is what I'm good at, this is what I love doing, this is the environment I want to work in. What does that look like in your world?
Mhm.
And open your eyes to different opportunities, different, and you never know what might come your way.
Yeah, and I wish I have met you a couple of decades back. I had to figure out these questions myself, by the way, when I was trying to find out what I passionate. But another thing which always, which I kept in my mind was, where does I feel more energized?
Yeah.
What make me more energized? I like to do things which fills me with energy. So
Yeah.
if drains energy out of me, then it's not for me, kind of. I think your three questions will be very helpful, and you touch based on
I
a.
think that I was just going to say, I think
Yeah,
that the energy question bridges what do you enjoy doing and what environment do you want to
yes,
work in? And it's a
exactly.
nice subset of those two questions.
Yeah. So you also you Adi also mentioned that, and just now also you touched based about vulnerability, and this is an area you have been now writing on as well, and. We had a good speaker on the podcast, Nick Johnson, talking about, and he's a master of, yeah, talking about vulnerability. What do you think? How important? Because you have been in the business of human connection and things like that, and with the emergent technology of AI, people are turning into like AI bots for coaching, mentoring. I think this is also becoming a thing now. And but in a way, these things, though it is very open and answers questions, or are there 24 hours validating you and asking questions back and forth from you, not getting tired like a human being, isn't this taking people away farther from human connection?
It
What do you
has the
think?
potential.
Yeah.
It has the potential to. So we touched on AI in the book.
Mhm.
And then I talked about it in the presentation in the Maldives. And Ruth and I wrote an article for Fast Company that's really resonated with a lot of people about the role of AI in mentoring as well. And I think that's a good example of your question. because in theory, you could use AI as a mentor, um, in theory, because in theory, AI has the wealth of the expertise and the knowledge that you're looking for from a mentor. And you could put prompts in that says, don't just tell me the answer, but challenge me, ask me questions. So you could build that into AI, but what AI can't have is empathy. What AI can't read is human body language. It can't read
Mhm.
between the lines of what you're saying. And I don't think it's ever going to replace that level of human connection that elevates mentoring from just a fact sharing experience to a human connection. So what we have to do with AI from a mentoring perspective is to use it as a tool to enhance the mentoring experience, creating better matches, capturing takeaways. Record a mentoring call, run it through an AI program, say, what do I need to remember from this? What should I challenge this person on next time?
Mhm.
But then that mentor needs to be listening and reading between the lines, which AI can't do, particularly in the moment. So if we use AI as a substitute for what humans can do, we lose human connection. If we use AI as a complement to what we do, then we get better at it. Let me give you another example. I have my own podcast. So, what I might do is if I'm interviewing you on my podcast, I might say, he has his profile, here's some blogs he's written, give me some questions to ask.
Mhm.
And it will shortcut that work of coming up with 5 or 6 questions to base my podcast on. That's fine. But if I only ask those questions without listening to what you're saying, then that podcast is going to be very boring. And I've always started my podcast having 5 or 6 questions to hand, but then I've had podcasts where I've only asked question one, and then
Yeah.
I've gone off on different tangents depending on what the person is saying. So again, AI can provide the framework, but not the full experience. And it's
Yeah.
human connection that fills the gap.
Yeah, it's funny that when you say it, actually, I have been trying out many AI apps and platforms last 3 years. And when I started this podcast, actually, I tried to try to generate questions based on the person's profile, do the research, use Gemini deep research or something like that to research about that person, what other websites are doing. I think these things, it is fine because even deep research is now, or AI platforms like Gemini will replace, I think, Google search as we know it. So it gives instantly search, and instead of us going through all the websites and things like that, summarize everything, here it is. So it works like more like an intern or someone like that, but
Yeah.
or a secretary or personal assistant. But like you said, when I came up with these questions, and one of the episodes, I use exactly the same questions with ChatGPT came up with, and I asked feedback from my audience. They found that I wasn't very connecting with the person on the other end, because
Yeah.
it is kind of mechanical, right? But so I think this is what exactly I did for today's episode also. I have a list of questions which was suggested by some AI apps to ask you, but actually I haven't even asked maybe 1% of
Yeah.
that.
That's it. That's it. And
Yeah.
even when you prepare them in advance,
Yeah.
you never rely on them. So AI produces the questions, but then you review them and say, okay. So for me, it's a prompt.
Mm.
It does that research work for me, but probably the questions that I end up with as my structure are not what AI came up with, but AI has got me. If the road to having the questions, if the start line of the interview is the finish line of the 100 meters race, and the 100 meters race is coming up with the questions, AI will get me to 60 meters.
Okay.
But then the other 40 meters I'm running myself. So when I hit the beginning of the interview, which is the finishing line of the 100 meters, very confusing metaphor, this one. then I've done that work.
Yeah. And I
Then
think
my
this is an very fascinating and exciting topic. Maybe we can talk on for hours and hours. But we are coming kind of closer to the end of our show today. I just want to ask you about the topic which I am writing, which is on which what I call is becoming unretirable.
yeah.
Uh, in your personal experience, which stage of becoming unretirable is you?
Let me throw that back to you first of all. How do
Okay.
you define unretirable?
I would define that as someone who has actually found their passion, purpose, their calling, and also their why, and they are very passionate about doing it. And in no time sooner, they see them like leaving that out, or they have plans. Okay, for example, you have been writing, speaking, and mentoring, and no plan of stopping it, and one day taking a traditional type of break, like people who has been working. Because Andy, I have been working in the actually retirement pensions profession as well before in my career. So I realize actually this industry only concentrates on the financial aspect of retirement. But the other emotional and whole other things like human connection, losing the human connection, losing the community when they are working, and the social life, and all those things is not considered when we talk about retirement. So actually, my plan or my mission now is to tell people actually start planning for that time, even way ahead, even if you're working now or you are having your own business or your own practice. Start planning way ahead so that you can find that something, so that you don't have to worry about retiring or what I'm going to do now after I quit this. That's it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm at an age now where, oh God, this is painful to say, where you start, really seeing that on the horizon. I'm 55 now.
Yeah.
Um, and I always said, when I started in this industry, I wanted to be in a position to semi-retire. By the time I was 50 or so, I'm not in that position, to be honest. But I can see that coming up. Excuse me, I can see that coming up in the next few years. And I'm also at the point where I don't necessarily want to be working at the pace and speed and the intensity I am now, but I don't envisage being retired. So I think that takes me to the place you're talking about. I'm probably the optimum person in a way to have that conversation because it's very real for me. And the fact is, I think I've always pictured a time when I can pick and choose the work I do, that I can invest more time in writing, and I invest more time in keynote speaking because I really enjoy that, but actually it's not the best commercial model for my business. So I can be more selective about what I do, but what I don't envisage is stopping working and pottering around a garden or playing golf the whole time. I gave that up many years ago. Um, I I would always want to be relevant. I would always want to be making a difference to someone. So for me, that vision is of writing books, writing articles and blogs, keynoting at conferences, supporting not-for-profits, and mentoring in a very selected way, and not having to do it for the money. uh,
Mhm.
you know, obviously supplementing any kind of retirement I have, but equally being able to say, well, actually, I'd like to go to the Maldives for a month or to India for a month and see my friends there and travel a little bit and not have that concern. It, I run my own business. I sell my time at the moment. if I'll be going to India for 3 weeks probably at the end of July. I mean, guaranteed for 10 days, 12 days, because I've got 6 or 7 days of workshops to run. But then I'm looking to go for a week to South India afterwards. 3 weeks out of my business has a huge opportunity cost. I've been invited, and I hope to be able to come to the Professional Speaking Summit in the Maldives, but that's
Yes.
only 3 weeks later. So that's a big, it's a big period of time away from my business. I want to be in a position where that doesn't matter. And so that for me is what retirement would look like, where I'm not really retired. So I think that goes to your definition. But
Yeah.
I can turn around and say, actually, I don't fancy work. I don't want to work for the next month. I'm going to have a break. And I am going to play golf, or I am going to do this, and I'm purely going to have a holiday. Um, but I couldn't see that as a permanent state.
Wonderful. I think you are an example of somebody who has become unretirable, right? I tell this jokingly to some of my friends that even if we want to get you retired, we cannot do it because you are unretirable.
That's it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine
Yes.
just stopping full stop. I even if you have a series of hobbies, I just I just and I do I was at the theatre last night. I was at a concert on Wednesday night. I was at the football, as you know, on Sunday. I was on a long hike the week before. I have a lot of hobbies, but not enough to fill every day.
Wonderful. And just as a last word for our audience, I think we didn't deep dive really into the topic of vulnerability and human connection, which you are writing and exploring at the moment and speaking. Can you share something which is important for people to remember, or your takeaways from the learnings you have done up to now? How important it is to become vulnerable to, and what does it does to human connection?
Yeah, so if we're talking specifically about vulnerability and it's linked to human connection, we as a society, and obviously there are cultural differences, but I think across, and I explored this in my book, Just Ask, across different communities, there is a common thread to a large degree. And I think that it is more likely that a culture will be reticent, will drive reticence towards vulnerability rather than encourage vulnerability. There'll be very few cultures where vulnerability is naturally encouraged. And that's a real shame, because by being vulnerable, we allow other people to help and support us. By allowing other people to help and support us, we enhance our potential to achieve. So if everyone is vulnerable and open, and vulnerability doesn't have to be, oh my God, everything's going wrong and I don't know what I'm doing. Vulnerability can be micro moments. But if we build that trust and that psychological safety that allows people to have those micro moments and build them up, then we build a more supportive, abundant, embracing culture and community. And when we do that, everyone thrives. Everyone achieves so much more because there's less judgment. And when there's less judgment, there's less fear to act. If we know we can fail, safe in the knowledge that others will pick us up and they won't judge us for it, we'll take more chances, going back to the courage we talked about earlier. So vulnerability is the key to achieving more in our life and in our professional career. So yeah, we need to create the environment where people can open up and feel comfortable doing so.
Thank you so much, Andy. You have been a great contributor, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I think we can take in to a few other hours. If you're coming down to Maldives, definitely I'm going to sit with you in person and talk about this more. Thank you very much for being on my show.
My pleasure, and best of luck with the book. And if I can help, just ask.
Thank you. Thank you for the offer. I will definitely take that as a yes. And for my viewers, as Andy has mentioned, finding your why or finding your purpose and hanging on to that actually gives you freedom. The freedom to decide what you want to do and when you want to do it. So this is what we have been talking about in all our podcasts, and more you will find in the podcasts to come. And until we come back again, one lesson, if you can take out away from today's session, don't forget to be vulnerable at the times you need to be. Thank you very much.